Now, on 105.9 FM and streaming worldwide on the WMAL app, Vince Colonnese.
Hey, good afternoon to you. It's 5:07 here, News Talk 105.9 WMAL, where we're making sense of the news. You can join us today, 888-630-9625, 888-630-WMAL. Washington loves to misuse data, to manipulate data, to abuse data, and then use it as a basis to abuse you. My next guest has been all over this story for many years, and he wants much more transparency out of the government. It is John Lott who joins us now. He's the president of the Crime Prevention Research Center. He's the author of Gun Control Myths. And up until January of 2021, he also worked in the United States Department of Justice as the Senior Advisor for Research and Statistics in the Office of Justice Programs. John, great to have you back with us, sir.
Oh, it's great to talk to you again. Thanks for having me on.
The FBI has new leadership. What should they concentrate on when it comes to the data they control?
Well, Cash and Dan have a huge job ahead of them just with the FBI in general. But I guess I've been a little bit concerned that while people have talked about a lot of the political biases, I mean, I was just listening to your show and talking about, the honeypot with Comey and other things that were going on. It's more than just, spying on Catholics or going after people who go to school board meetings and what have you. If you allow people to distort the data, you allow them to distort the political debates that are going on. And I dealt with the data people at the FBI when I was there, and it's more than just the FBI. I mean, I think this is a problem that I've seen throughout the government. It's very different from when I worked in the government in the 1980s. If you pointed to data problems, people would fix them. There wasn't a debate, either the data was right or wrong. I have had instances where I've even gotten the people at the FBI to admit that there were errors in the data, and years later, they still have refused to fix those issues. But, we saw last year, I mean, people talk about how the FBI has interfered in past campaigns. They interfered in the campaign last year. For a whole year, we had headlines in news articles saying crime is down, but people mistakenly think that it's increasing. And that was based on data from 2022 that was released in October 2023. That's released about a year afterwards. And, when David Muir was, fact-checking Trump, he was referring to the FBI data that was there from 2022. It was the only final data that was available when he was making that claim. But last September, the FBI came out with its data for 2023 and secretly revised its data for 2022. Rather than a drop in violent crime of 2.1%, they were showing that now it had increased by 4.5%. But they didn't mention that in the press release. And I can understand, 98% of the news people, they just read the press release. They don't actually read the report itself.
Yeah.
But even if they had read the report, there was only one footnote buried in the report that had one sentence that vaguely just said that they had updated the data for 2022. No reference about how it had gone from a drop to an increase. No explanation for why they had made the change. They still haven't explained why they made the change for 2022. And then even when the media started covering the fact that and they would reach out to the FBI would only make very vague statements saying that we stand by our data. Before the election, they refused, because if they had actually come out and said, yeah, it went from a drop to an increase, and that's an official statement from us, rather than somebody having to look through the data files that they had there, then the legacy media probably would have had to cover it. But instead, it provided, a cover for them, so they never had to report that up through the election. I mean, that's just one example. They should have been transparent. If given all the massive news coverage that they had for those numbers,
yes,
and its use in the political debate, you would think that they would mention in their press release. You would think that even if they hadn't mentioned in their press release, there at least would be some substantive discussion in the report itself.
Yes.
But there wasn't. And
no, but this was bad faith, though. I mean, the unfortunate thing is that this wasn't a good faith exercise. This was designed to mislead us. It's the same thing with the economic data. We were constantly told by the media that the economy is doing great, it's humming along, it's improving dramatically. That was not the experience of Americans. And in fact, I'm seeing some news outlets now admitting actually things were really bad, things were really crappy, as Americans are in well over $1 trillion in credit card debt. We're at record levels. They're not living they can't even live paycheck to paycheck. They're going into debt in order to figure out how to pay for basic things. So our media lie to us, and the institutions that are supposed to inform our media, these government data collectors, they're lying, and it was all in the service of political goals.
Yeah. Look, I mean, I'm an economist by training, but, the data for the FBI is even worse than the data for employment. With the employment, they knew that there were systematic errors in terms of them overestimating the number of people employed. They just refused to fix it. So they kept on giving out month after month numbers. But then when they finally do an update,
yes,
that would get some media coverage that, they had overestimated the number of people that had gotten employed over the previous year by 800,000.
Exactly.
But by the way, just one little comment, when they say that it's 160,000 or 180,000 jobs, people have to realize that the population is growing. You need something like over 180,000 in order just to keep up with the larger population that you have. But that's a side point. But it's even worse with the FBI. And I can give you lots of examples, but I'll just give you one other that I talked about in the piece there. And that is one of the jobs I had when I was a senior advisor for research and statistics in the Department of Justice was to look at the FBI's active shooting reports. These are reports that they put out every year on shootings that occur in public, not part of some other type of crime like a robbery or a gang fight over drug turf. It could be anything from one person being shot at and missed all the way up to a mass public shooting. And it's used in courts, it's used in the media, it's used in academia, the reports that they have there. When I was there, they claimed that only about 4% of these active shooting cases were stopped by citizens with concealed carry permits, about 14 by their count. When I was there, I said, look, guys, you've misclassified some of these things. Some of these guys you're calling security guards were actually just civilians. Other cases you've missed. Rather than 14, it should be 180. And so rather than 4%, if you look up through the current day, because we keep it updated, you're talking about 36%. And the other debate I had with them, I said, look, if you're talking about law-abiding citizens stopping the attacks, you can't expect a law-abiding citizen to stop an attack in a place that's a gun-free zone where they're banned from carrying. And if you look at the places where people were allowed to carry, over half of these active shooting cases were stopped by legally armed civilians with a concealed carry permit. But, and nobody needs to take my word for this. I mean, they can look at our website at crimeresearch.org. I have all the cases as well as links to the underlying documents so people can check to make sure. But I did that without millions of dollars. I mean, the FBI gave some gun control people basically, I think, like $60 million to do lots of things. They refused to say how much they actually spent, how many millions they actually spent on putting these data together. But, I did it with pretty much on my own. And even when you could get the FBI to go and admit that they had missed a case, they still haven't fixed it. I mean, it's one thing, it's hard enough to believe that they just systematically miss this one type of case where a civilian with a concealed handgun stopped an active shooting attack. That's strange belief. But the fact that they won't even fix it, even after they're, it's one thing just to miss something and be sloppy, but then not to fix the cases after you're informed that you missed it, that goes to, real bias.
Yeah, of course, because all of these misses go in the same direction. Every one of the data, the data inaccuracies that you're referring to head in exactly the same direction. So if it's the economy, it's painting a rosier picture than exists on behalf of Democrats who are in charge. Or if it's on guns, it's constantly pushing out data, misleading, manipulated data that's designed to serve as a predicate to disarm law-abiding citizens. And so, in other words, you have political operations who are claiming to be dispensing, the honest data when they're doing anything but.
Right. Look, when I was working in the Department of Justice, I get asked questions sometimes. How was it that you could have the FBI spying on a presidential campaign and not have any leaks or whistleblowers? And the answer is pretty simple, and that is if you have everybody agree with everybody else politically and they all think that they're doing the right thing, you're not going to have any leaks or whistleblowers. I can't talk about the FBI generally because I didn't deal with the FBI generally, but I dealt with the data people. And they would hide data when you would ask for them.
Yeah.
When the Bureau of Justice Statistics would ask for data from them, and they wouldn't fix things, and they just fought you tooth and nail right along there. And I just came to believe that the people, at least the data people in the FBI, were just filled with true believers.
So what should they do? So here, the critical element is like, how do they fix this? What do Kash Patel and Pam Bondi and Dan Bongino, what do they focus on to get this under control and give the American people an accurate presentation? Well,
they're going to have to, I would go and things like the hiding of the crime data last year. I'd like to look at the emails back and forth between the people who were involved in that and find out who the worst people were, at least. You just can't fire everybody, even if you might want to in the data thing, even if they're all biased to some degree, because they have a lot of institutional knowledge that's there on how to put the data together. You're going to have to get rid of some people. And those are the types of investigations that I would engage in order to try to, and just like they bring in people from the outside with Dan and with Kash, they have to bring in somebody from the outside. Now, they don't have the same type of political appointments that they have for the director and the deputy director, but you have to bring in somebody at a senior civil service appointment to go and deal with that and kind of supervise the stuff that's there.
Yeah, it's a big task ahead of them. But you're right. The data is so important, and not enough people think about it. I know you do all the time, which is why we constantly turn to you on that subject. John Lott with the Crime Prevention Research Center. Thank you, sir. Great to talk to you as always.
Thanks for being there.
Of course. It's 5:20 now.
Tomorrow on the Chris Plant Show in Democrat-run Wisconsin, a mother is now known as an inseminated person. 9 a.m. on WMAL.
President Trump. The president has been apparently doing yet another very long-winded press conference from the Oval Office today, which includes a lot of interesting information. They are navigating towards a deal to try and resolve the war in Ukraine right now. Vladimir Zelensky is going to be here Friday. It looks like they've got a deal to actually get minerals, rare earth minerals, out of Ukraine and into the hands of the United States, that we will benefit there as a way to pay us back for all of this taxpayer-funded support we've given, these loans we've given without any repayment whatsoever through the years. President Trump looking to figure out how that conflict, as he winds it down, can be used to the benefit of the United States. Finally, somebody thinking of what's in America's interest in the midst of all of this. So that looks like things are moving there. Also, President Trump signed an executive order today revoking the security clearances of the law firm that was working with Jack Smith to go after Donald Trump. This is here it is, a little bit ago.
At the outset of your administration, sir, you committed to ending the weaponization of government, to holding those accountable who participated in the weaponization of government.
Hold it. This is a good one. Is everybody listening? Deranged Jack Smith. We're going to call it the Deranged Jack Smith signing or bill. Go ahead.
One law firm that provided pro bono legal services to the special counsel's office under Jack Smith's leadership was Covington and Burling. As a result of
that's Eric Holder's operation.
Those actions, we're now going to be suspending and putting under review the security clearances for the attorneys and employees at that firm who worked with Jack Smith's team. and we're going to continue holding the people who were responsible for the weaponization of government, who supported it, accountable for what they did.
And you'll be doing this with other firms as time goes by, right?
We're looking at sort of the whole panoply of options.
The weaponization of our system by law firms, even pro bono work they're doing just in order to clog up government, stop government. And nobody knows about it more than me. And hopefully that'll never happen again.
So Covington and Burlington?
Covington and Burlington.
Okay.
Dem law firm. Eric Holder's operation.
May I ask you a question about Europe? So long term.
Hey, don't ask
you
questions
plan
right now.
to
He's signing.
The number of U.S. troops
Wait, I just want to savor this one, please. Who would like this pen? Hey, why don't you send it to Jack Smith?
I think he just tossed it to a reporter.
Deranged person.
Some reporter said, I'll take it. And so he caps it off and he goes, why don't you send it to Jack Smith? And he throws it at the reporter. I can't see, it was off camera, whether or not he's got the hand-eye coordination to catch it. That's an awesome marker. I don't think I would give it to Jack Smith. I think I'd keep that one. This is the marker that is destined for Jack Smith, I would say. And then I would keep it because it's awesome. So he just stripped the security clearances of people who have been involved in abusing power to try and crush the Democrats' political opponents. Yeah. I love these press conferences. What was that reporter thinking? Can you please talk about Europe and what's going on? No, wait a second. I got to savor this moment, lady. We'll get to your question. We'll get to it. We got a lot more ahead on the Vince Coglianese Show.
News Talk 105.9 WMAL, making sense of the news.
Hey, good afternoon to you. It's 5:35 here, News Talk 105.9 WMAL, where we are making sense of the news. You can join us today, 888-630-9625, 888-630-WMAL. Let me take a phone call. I've got Melissa calling in from Southern Maryland on line 1. Melissa, good afternoon. You are on the Vince Coglianese Show. Hello.
Hi, Vince. Thank you so much for your show. You guys are so wonderful over at WMAL.
You're sweet. Thank you.
Thank you. I was calling in initially about the debate about Dan Bongino and his appointment.
Yeah.
And like I was telling the call screener, it's crazy to me because what nobody is saying, specifically the left, is he did a complete service under Barack Obama.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
And he talked about it freely and routinely, and he was wonderful.
Yeah, sorry, you said he was in the Secret Service protecting Obama. That's what you said, right?
Yes.
Yeah, exactly
So,
right.
I mean,
that is a sign.
alone.
And that's a clear sign, isn't it, of his sense of duty. It has nothing to do with his politics. He disagreed completely with Obama. He spent many years since then talking about that. But he was willing to give his life for his country to protect Obama and to keep him safe. And that had nothing to do with the politics and everything to do with service to country.
Absolutely. And even more frustrating to me is for the major outlet media to not even mention that he has this kind of a qualification. He's just a podcaster. It's absurd. It's absurd.
And it's funny, actually. They use podcaster as an insult. I think it's pretty cool because he's succeeded in that space. But regardless...
They use it as an insult because they know podcasters are coming for their job.
Yeah, exactly right. Yeah, they're angry. They're bitter about that, and they long for the days that was considered. Oh, what does that even mean? Yeah, you know what it means. That guy's got a lot bigger audience than you do, and he's got a lot more credibility than you do. And now he's going to be in a position to affect positive change, which is why they're freaking out about it.
We're behind him.
Mm-hmm.
We're behind him. We're behind Cash, and we're excited to see what they're going to bring to us. And let me tell you, this is coming from somebody who works in the federal government. So I mean, I get it. And you know, there's turmoil in our workforce at times just because of the unknown.
Yeah, sure.
But you know, I support my president, and I support God, and he'll find his path, and whatever's meant to be will be.
You know something? I find that taking the eternal view relaxes me a lot. Like, anytime it's like, wow, this is really crazy. The second I'm like, you know what? God has a plan for me. It's not the same plan that I have, and it turns out it's always better than the one I have. Once you realize that, it really does have a calming effect, doesn't it?
It does. It does. Whatever's meant to be will be, and it will work out the way it was meant to be for me.
Yeah.
You know?
And so
whatever my thing is.
And Melissa, you're a federal government employee. Is it difficult for federal government employees to send an email that takes 40 seconds to write and say that I'm alive? Is that a difficult thing?
So I will tell you this. I have my email prepped and ready to go.
Uh-huh.
I happen to work for an agency that was told to stand down.
Sure.
So I have stand down by directive of my command. But I haven't. I had it ready to go. It wasn't even 2 minutes. I mean, you're working, and you can't say I answer phone calls.
Uh-huh.
I worked on reports or whatever. I find that to be absurd, and to act as though previously, I have over 30 years in private industry.
Yeah.
So I might have a different perspective in that regard because I have done this numerous times. We do it in the government too.
Of course. I
find it silly that people are so up in arms about it, and I find, if I could send it without it hurting my command, I would do so.
Yeah, I kind of think, I'm not going to make this call for you, but I kind of think that, I get it, that some of the agencies are saying we're handling this in-house. And the White House today reiterated, hey, look, if your agency is handling it in-house, they're handling it in-house. That's how they're doing it. But I still think every federal worker should send some sort of email. You don't even have to give detail. Just be like, hey, we're handling it in-house in my agency, but I'm really grateful that you even care what I'm doing because it's a sign that this country's getting back on track. And then just fire that off to the HR email address and consider your work done.
I will tell you this. I send information like that via X, via whatever means possible through your show now, because I do appreciate it. And we're not all out there bemoaning. We all understand that we all understood there was going to be a shakeup. We all knew that.
Yeah.
So, all I know is I work very hard every day, and I believe that I give my service to the civilians, and I give my service to I am very fortunate. I work with a group of people, and one in particular who handles contracts and all, and the exact words out of his mouth every time we talk about a budget is, would the taxpayer approve of this?
Yeah.
Does the taxpayer really
what a
want
novel
the money
idea. What a novel idea. I can't even believe that's breaking into these conversations.
And he was, at one point, very frustrated with the idea that wasn't the paramount thing. And I think he himself is probably relieved that his idea now is not novel, that it's going to be appreciated. And I always have admired him so much. So I can tell you I work around a great group of people, and I hope nobody's affected adversely by not doing
me too.
The bulletins. But, we are, as a federal workforce, we're moving forward, and we're just doing what we have to do to get our jobs done correctly. It's not hard.
Yeah, no, that's exactly right. Yeah, the proof of life email, not the hardest thing ever given to an employee of any agency. Hey, Melissa, thank you in Southern Maryland, one of the good ones, and I hope you're great, and thank you very much for your call today.
Thank you, guys, and best of luck to Dan.
Yeah, best of luck to Dan. Thank you, Melissa. Everyone's very excited. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah,
thanks.
Yeah. Dan's off to. Is it bigger and better? Yeah, it's big. I guess the deputy director of the FBI is a pretty big job. Great things. So cool to see. Now, while some people are being hired for important jobs, other people are being fired for doing terrible jobs, but it's long overdue. Joy Ried just got canned by MSNBC yesterday, and they let her do one more show. The news broke before she was able to get on the air. And a media company, you've got to make a decision about this. If you're going to can the person, you either decide, okay, we're not putting our microphone in front of their face. We're not putting our cameras on them anymore because who knows what they're going to say. But let me first take you back in time on Joy Ried. Joy Ried is a bigot. She's about as bigoted as any mainstream news presenter could possibly be. She is a florid racist, and she's been this way for years, and everyone acts like her discourse was totally normal, at least in the legacy press, or that she's on the side of justice or something. Here she is. Tom Elliott over at Grabien put together a useful supercut on some of the moments that Joy Ried has had through the years.
The race lady. Why would he call me that? Is this really about me fixating on race, or is it about you fixating on race?
But Donald Trump wants to never let black and brown folk up off the mat. Evident what they mean by DEI, right? Why not just say what you mean? You can't stand black people. We get it. You've been heard. Are you committed to naming a black woman as your vice presidential running mate? They wanted to go after the brown people, too, because, of course, that is their other target.
You feel joy? Say joy.
It's not fashionable to be openly racist anymore in America, unlike what they call the good old days. Only the white Christian men may have the things. So you own everything that happens to your mixed status families and to your wives, sisters, and abuelas.
Joy. Anyway, and then he cuts a bunch of movie clips into this thing, but it goes on and on. There's over 3 minutes of just Joy Ried being a full-blown racist. A lot more material available to access. And so, through the years, it's always been, everything was filtered through the lens of my political opponents don't like me because of the color of my skin, and then telling people that her audience, that she would say that Republicans don't like you based on whatever skin color you are. It's utterly contemptible. Utterly. And you would think, traditionally a news outlet would say, we can't have this on the air. This is crazy. This is shameful, what we're broadcasting. So yesterday, NBC, under some new leadership, they finally decided to can her. And so her reactions began with, she did a Zoom interview. She's like over a Zoom call. And she's crying about all of this now.
My show had value. And that, I'm sorry, that what I was doing had value.
Oh, my gosh. And it goes on and on. She's just crying and crying and crying about this. When, this is the least that she deserves. She just shouldn't be on the air. She got on her final show last night, and she began it with a screed about how the left needs to resist fascism.
Happy Monday, everyone. And we begin tonight with what I think is the question. When you are in the midst of a crisis, and specifically a crisis of democracy, how do you resist? When fascism isn't just coming, it's already here. So what, if anything?
She represents the party that loathes democracy. Remove your political opponent from the ballots. Arrest him. Go after all of his supporters. Imprison them. Sick the FBI on them nationwide. This is what she supports.
Can you do about it? Well, for one thing, you can try to learn from history, from what people in this situation in countries around the world and in America have done before. As my friend Rachel Maddow always says, history is here to help. America hasn't always been a free country for everyone, and we've had resistance movements from day one, from enslaved people fighting their captivity.
She represents the party that was responsible for every ounce of tyranny that she's now about to describe.
Shout out to Harriet Tubman, who was a 92%er before 92%ing was cool. And even taking up arms during the Civil War. To the women's movement and the workers' rights movement. And
they're big on women. They really want to protect women.
The Stonewall gay rights movement.
Make men women.
They've all been versions of the fight to make this a free country for everyone and to have a true multiracial democracy.
Oh, yeah.
And that's is history's most important lesson, right? That the most important thing, the first rule, is to fight back. To never stop resisting. Do not obey in advance.
To fight. So what she's calling for is she wants you to fight for a bigoted system. The rest of us would like a normal world where we don't judge each other on immutable characteristics. Joy Ried also decided, it's her last show, so she's going to do a mega panel of a bunch of unhappy people. It included Rachel Maddow, Nicole Wallace. Nicole Wallace is a real doozy because she served at one point in the Bush White House. She was like a communications person in the Bush White House. She's an angry, angry fixture on MSNBC, constantly scolding everybody for daring to have normal thoughts about anything. And then she also brought on Lawrence O'Donnell. So a commie, Lawrence O'Donnell, who I think at one point he said on air that he's a full-blown socialist, I think. It was a couple years ago. So they were all celebrating the end of Joy's show or something.
I want to bring in my pals, Rachel Maddow, Nicole Wallace, and Lawrence O'Donnell. I wanted you guys to be here with me because you are my comrades in arms in covering this insane moment that we're in.
The Legion of Dumb. That's like, what is that group of people all together on one screen? How come they weren't fired? One of the themes here, by the way, is that lefties have noticed that a bunch of non-white people were just fired by MSNBC. and they're furious about it. They think it was overtly racist, and let's just go with that. It was overtly racist that they were firing everybody but the white people. In fact, among the people who noticed was the one-time MSNBC star Keith Olbermann. Keith Olbermann noticed. He said, MSNBC's racist purge escalates. I cannot get enough of this story. He posted this to X yesterday. And he names someone called Ayman Moyeldin, who I've never heard of, Katie Fang, and Jonathan Capehart ousted alongside Joy Ried and Alex Wagner. So it's a racist purge going on at MSNBC. Olbermann is beside himself about all of this. He can't even believe it. He decided yesterday to post to X. He warned Rachel Maddow that by the time her show would air last night, at a minimum, if you go on the air tonight, or at a minimum go on without condemning, I see, the first part is if you even go on the air tonight, you're doing something wrong. Or at a minimum, if you go on without condemning the overt racism of the people who give you $25 million a year, you are complicit, Olbermann said. Same for you, Lawrence O'Donnell. And you, Chris Hayes, he writes, protest or you are all Joe Scarborough, he writes. I love everybody's catching strays. Like the left is in a full-out war right now with itself. So Rachel Maddow did go on the air last night, and she obeyed Keith Olbermann. Listen.
Well, first I want to say that I love you, Joy. I love you. And that I am bereft.
Oh, I'm sorry. This is from the actual Joy Ried portion of the night's festivities.
The readout is ending. I just can't even. I sort of can't get beyond that.
Yeah, blah, blah, blah. Okay, all right. So that's where she was. And then when she went on the air at 9 p.m., this is what it sounded like.
I love everything about her. I have learned so much from her. I have so much more to learn from her. I do not want to lose her as a colleague here at MSNBC. And personally, I think it is a bad mistake to let her walk out the door. It is not my call, and I understand that. But that's what I think.
All right, a little bit of a gentle pushback. Not my call, but it was kind of a bad mistake to let her go. I don't know what to do. And then she said this.
I will tell you, it is also unnerving to see that on a network where we've got two non-white hosts in primetime, both of our non-white hosts in primetime are losing their shows, as is Katie Fang on the weekend. And that feels worse than bad, no matter who replaces them. That feels indefensible, and I do not defend it.
Her bosses are racist. What world? She goes on the air. She makes $25 million a year, as you heard Keith Olbermann helpfully point out. And she says, I like working here, but I got to let you in on something. My bosses are racist. I work for a bunch of racists who just fired all of the non-white primetime hosts on our network because of their racist racism, says Rachel Maddow. And because everyone is so beta in that entire network, she'll be back on the air tonight. She'll be back. Okay. Oh, you're right, Rachel. I'm sorry. Okay, this will blow over. Okay. It is. It's wonderful to watch. It really is. It's 5:52.
Mark Levin, weekdays 6 till 9 on 105.9 WMAL, making sense of the news.
There's a movement online right now among lefties to boycott MSNBC. At what point do your ratings get so low that you don't notice the effects of a boycott? and Joy Ried, she did finish her show last night. There is a way to find her. It's on Blue Ski. Take a listen.
Tonight's readout. You can follow me on Blue Sky, Instagram, Threads, and on Substack at substack.joy. It's at joyandread.substack.com.
She can't
also
even
on
deliver
TikTok
it.
And Facebook at Joy Ried Official.
Blue Ski. Notice she's not on X. She's harumphing her way through life. Not on X. Yeah, you're not on MSNBC either. Don't worry. She'll probably say something really crazy on Blue Ski or somewhere else. And I enjoy playing her clips so I can mock them, so we may find them again. It may not be the last you hear from Joy Ried. Have a great night. The great one, Mark Levin, up next here on WMAL.
News Talk 105.9 WMAL, making sense of the news.